Hey everybody, happy Torch Thursday. Hope everyone is doing well wherever you are out there on the internet today. Hope everyone had a good Thursday and is ready to sit down and mess around with some fire to do this project. This is our A-frame ring, and it's actually really difficult to see on the photo why I decided to call it that, because like I said on this afternoon's tutorial, I'm so bad at taking pictures of rings. I just cannot. Oh, Lori, why you gotta be mean like that? Hi, Ace. Yeah, I can never seem to get all the pertinent parts of the ring into the picture. So this is why I called it A-frame ring, because it's basically an A-frame setting essentially. This will work for an emerald cut stone or a radiant cut stone. The difference being that a radiant cut stone like this one in my sample, or like this giant honkin' amethyst that I think I'm going to use for my project tonight, typically will have corners that are flattened down, whereas a lot of your, well, that's not necessarily true. Emerald cuts are going to have diagonal corners. Rectangular princess cuts are going to have. There we go. Yes, I know my gemstone terms. Sure, I do. It's a good thing there's not going to be a test. So princess cuts have the pointy corners, and emerald cuts have the flattened out corners. Radiant cuts also have flattened out corners, but they have a different facet pattern. They don't have the long longitudinal facets. They have more like a brilliant cut kind of facet. So the ones with the flattened corners, your emerald cuts, are going to work best for this because your corners are exposed in this setting, so they are sticking out. Now if I were doing something like this rectangular princess cut little zircon, what I would do is I would just extend the setting all the way to the edge so that it was protecting you're not going to be able to get it over, but right to the edge so that it's protecting those corners a little bit. But I think I'm going to go ahead and work with this giant honkin' amethyst tonight. And the reason I've picked this one is because it's already a little dinged up. It's got a couple of chips on the girdle, and it's got a chip on one of the corners. So this is not a good setting for like your most rare and precious fragile jewels, okay? It's got a lot of your stone exposed, which if it's a durable stone like a quartz or amethyst, citrine, something like that, isn't going to be a huge problem, you know, but you do run the risk of bashing this into something and chipping your stone. So that's why you want to use A stone that's pretty durable, and B, a stone that's not particularly expensive. Hi Corvus, how are you? Okay, so let's talk tools and supplies for this this evening's tutorial. I guess it's afternoon for Corvus, but it's evening for the rest of us. Obviously it's evening for me, goodness gracious. So, tools and supplies for this evening's tutorial. You are going to need some sterling silver sheet metal, and I'm using 26 gauge sterling silver sheet this evening. You could also use 24. Either one will work. You're going to need some wire for your ring shank. I've got some 10 gauge half round that I'm going to be using today, but you could also use rectangular wire. You could use full round wire if you wanted to. You could use square wire. You could use pattern wire. So anything that you can make a ring shank out of is going to work for this project. You need a stone. So once again, I'm using my big honkin' amethyst, and you need some easy solder. Maybe the one thing that I don't actually have over here. Oh, no, I do have some. That's good. Not a ton, but you don't need a ton of solder for this project. There aren't that many joints in it. So, easy solder, wire for your ring shank, sterling silver sheet metal, and a stone. As far as tools go, of course, it's a soldering class, so you're going to need all your basic soldering tools. In addition to your torch and all of that, you are going to want to have a dividers on hand. Or like a straight edge, a graphing ruler, just something that's going to enable you to draw two parallel lines. Your hand tools, round nose, chain nose, wire cutters, and you may need a scribe. This is my grandfather's scribe, and I just rediscovered it, and now it won't come out of the thing. But I'm super excited about using it. I've been using it all day, except now apparently there we go, it's stuck. Haha. So we're going to scribe some lines for bending. So the scribe is going to be useful in that. instance, you're going to need tweezers for picking up hot things, solder pick may be helpful, metal shears for sure, ring mandrel, and a rawhide mallet, and probably a couple of other things that I've forgotten about. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set these pieces to the side so that I don't lose them, and I'm going to make my A-frame piece. So your A-frame piece needs to be as wide as, woo, that's bright. My camera does not like the bright shiny metal. It really does not. There, that's a little bit more reasonable. Look at that. You can still see it and it doesn't look like the Sahara. Okay, so you need your A-frame to be as wide as your stone is, and then it needs to be long enough to basically come down one side of your stone, over the pavilion, up the other side, and then roll over the edges to hold it. So I go ahead and just kind of approximate that by rolling my stone. No, this is not a very precise way to do this, but it does work. Alright, so I'm probably going to wind up cutting it there-ish, but we'll see. So I'm going to take my dividers, and I'm going to set my dividers to the width of my stone. Actually, technically it's the length of my stone. So I've just got my dividers, and I've just clamped them down so that they're the same width as that dimension of my stone that I need to copy. I'm going to put one edge of my dividers on the outside of my metal, and one of these scribes better than the other because it's pointier. And then I'm just going to draw that down my metal, and what that's going to make is it's going to make a scribe line for me. And then I'm going to grab my metal shears and I'm going to cut that metal out. Like so. So now I've got my piece of sheet metal, and so let's see, how long are you, piece of sheet metal? Alright, you are, alright, just for ease of everything, I'm just going to nip off that last little eighth so I have an even measurement, because I know that this piece is longer than I need. Okay. Now I have an even, basically 1.5 inches of sheet metal, so that means 3/4 of an inch is going to be my center point, which is going to be here. And so I want to go ahead and scribe a line at that center point, and for that I can use, so excited. So my grandfather passed away a number of years ago, and he loved to build things. He was very good at building things also, and he had a basement full of tools, and my father, by the time my grandfather passed, already had his own basement full of tools, and my Aunt Tammy's husband isn't really into building things, so I got all of, or most of, my grandfather's tools, and there's so much. That was back when I was driving my orange Chevy HHR, and I literally loaded that vehicle up from the bottom to the ceiling, and from the back of, the hatch to the back of the seats and the passenger seat with just tools, and drove from Milwaukee to Dallas with them, and there were so many that I still haven't gone through all of the little like boxes and containers and things. So I did that the other day with a couple of them because I was reorganizing my tool closet, and I found all these cool little tools, including this tiny little T-square. Oh my god, it's the cutest thing ever. And this awesome scribe. So I'm going to scribe myself a line down the middle of my metal. Alright, and that is, let me see if I can get one more, I can get that a little deeper, because that's actually going to be a bending line. I just want to take a couple of, now that I got it square, I can do this. So just take a couple of passes down with the Scribe so I've got this nice little groove in here, and then I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers and I'm going to bend it. Now, I know. And he actually had, 3 of these tiny little T-squares. This is the smallest ones. The other ones are slightly wider. It even has a clip so you can clip it onto your pocket. Snazzy, snazzy. Okay, so now I'm going to take my metal where I scribed and I'm going to bend it. So if you're bending with your chain nose pliers, you may have noticed that your chain nose pliers jaw is at an angle. So if I were to line up the bottom of my chain nose pliers here, I wouldn't be bending straight on my line. So what I actually need to do is put my pliers at an angle so that I'm going to bend right on that scribed line. So I'm putting my pliers right next to my scribe line. So what was his craft? He was a mechanical engineer, and then he also did woodworking. He could fix anything pretty much that had an engine. He fixed sewing machines as a hobby. He would get sewing machines and lawnmowers and snowblowers at garage sales that didn't work, for really cheap, and then he would fix them up and he would sell them at his own garage sales for still pretty cheap, but a little more expensive because they worked. But yeah, so I mean, saws, drill presses, everything. He could build anything, I think, short of a car, he could have built in his basement. Okay, so now I'm just going to press this up, and the benefit of that score line is that's going to give my metal a place where it naturally wants to bend. Alright, so that's my little A-frame, and I just want to straighten out this one random kind of curve here because I want it to be symmetrical. You may have noticed when I held up this one that it's not symmetrical. We're going to try and do better this time than we did on the sample as far as symmetry goes. Yeah, he was a pretty awesome guy. I mean, he definitely could have built like a, an RC car for sure. Okay, so now we're going to drop this in and look at this from the side. So what we're going to have here is my exposure just being a complete pain in my ass, which is great. There we go. Okay, so what we want is we want the stone to sit in the frame, kind of like it's doing right now. If I wanted it to sit a little bit lower, I could open up my frame just a little bit. If I didn't want it to be quite so high, but as a rule, the bigger your stone is, the taller your frame is going to have to be, because that's just physics. Okay, I think I like that better because it's not quite so tall. And then I'm going to go ahead and I want to, alright, so I want to cut, alright, so here's the edge of my stone, and I really just need like a 1/16 of an inch or so above that, so right about there. So I'm just going to make myself a little mark there, and then I'm going to go back with my square that line, and you actually square. The answer to that is no, it's not actually square. This is the problem with tools. If you don't use them properly, they don't work. We have to have the square lined up properly. we're just eyeballing this puppy. Just needs to come this way, just a fuzz, and that's going to be square. So that's my cut line. So I'm going to grab my metal shears again, and I'm going to cut just straight across. Now, this is where dividers come in super duper handy, which is for replicating things. So I'm going to take my dividers and I'm going to set them so that they are the same width as that. And then what I can do is I can put one in my little V here, and I can drag it across, and theoretically I can get the same size. Though why does that not look like the same size to me? Okay, there's no way that cannot be the same size. Alright, so then I'm just gonna stick that in there, and let's try and make this a little bit less difficult. Let's take my dividers and just put that in there. Don't try and drag it all the way across, just make a scribe line right there, and then I'm going to do this again with my little square. And then that is, once again, my cut line. Okay, so it looks relatively symmetrical at the moment. A little too wide, but I think I'm just gonna go with it at this point. Alright, and then I'm gonna need to scribe my lines for when I go to set this. So that's my dividers again. To get this distance right here, where that's going to need to bend over to set my stone. And this I should be able to do fairly easily by just dragging that around the edge. And then again, creating that scribe line is going to make it easier to bend there. Okay, so there we go. That's my A-frame. And if I want to, I can grab some sandpaper. Just do a little bit of sanding on this. So I'm going to sand just the edges of my A-frame. Smooth them down a bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the top as well. And what I'm going to try and do when I'm sanding the top is I'm actually going to try and sand at an angle like this. Let me see if I can actually make that visible on the camera. So that what I have is I've got a nice diagonal transition down to my stone. Okay, so all I've done is I've just kind of taken off the edge of that edge, so I've got a nicer, it's not quite as sharp as it is here. now that our A-frame is made, it's time to make our ring. So I'm going to grab my ring mandrel. I'm going to need that in a minute, so I shouldn't put that too far away. Also throwing torches, apparently. I'm going to grab my ring mandrel, and I'm going to grab my 10 gauge half round wire, and I'm going to go for a size 7 ring because that's a good average size. So I'm going to go up about 2 or 3 sizes. So I'm going to go up to a 4. I'm going to grab my wire, just hold that against my mandrel and wrap it around my mandrel as tightly as I can. Whew, my hands are tired today and I do not know why. All the way around. So it's over, yes, that was my squeeze face. So it's overlapping like so. And at this point, if I want to, I can take a rawhide mallet and I can curve those ends, which I may or may not need to do. Okay, and it's still too big. It's a 7.5, so I need to go up a little more. I know why it's too big. It's because my hands are just, for some reason today, not working very well. So I'm just going to twist that a little tighter. There we go, and drop it down. So what you want is for it to have kind of a nice solid grip on the size of your choice. And then I'm going to locate a marker, or I can use my trusty Scribe. And I'm just going to scribe a cut line. So I'm just going to go right across both of these and make 2 cut lines that are aligned with each other. And then I'm going to use a wire cutter to flush cut at those lines. Okay, and at this point it doesn't really matter, you know, the shape of your ring's probably not very pretty, which is fine. We're going to round it out after we're going to round it out. Actually, we're going to round it out now. I guess so, but goodness gracious. Don't my hands know that, you know, I got stuff to do? Alright, so now I'm going to put this on here. I'm going to round it out with my mallet, which is going to be a little easier now that it's not overlapping. And then I'm going to need to trim off enough of it so that this A-frame can sit down in there just a little bit. Okay, you don't want it to sit in there too much because it is invading the space inside of your ring that is typically reserved for your fingers. See that? So you don't want it to sit down in there too far, but you need it to go down in there far enough that you can get a good solder joint. So I'm just going to widen this gap a little bit with my flush cutter. So I'm going to line that up, and I'm just going to go ahead and snip a little bit of extra. Yeah, okay, so that's about what I want there. Now I need to file these edges, and I don't need to file these edges straight. I need to file them so that they will sit flush against my A-frame, which means I actually need to solder them going, or not solder them, file them going this way. So, grab me a file. Okay, so I'm going to go this direction. Okay, so I'm trying to file a V that mirrors the shape of my A-frame. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And then we're going to see, does that sit in and have nice contact? And wham bam, it does. Okay, so now we're going to solder our A-frame to our ring shank. Now, if you are not an experienced fabricator, if you're a beginner at this, I highly recommend you listen to the 5-point soldering safety video, which is my just 5 quick points, which in my opinion are extremely important as far as just making sure that you have a safe workspace, either in your own home workspace or that you stay safe in a community workspace. You can get the link to that video by typing !safety, thank you Lori, into the Twitch chat, and that will take you to that video. Of course, if you're doing a home studio, consult actual experts. Don't just listen to random people on the internet. But I have been teaching soldering for a number of years, so these are just a few things that really stick in my head as to, you know, how to make this a safe pastime. Alright, that should... Alright, so I'm going to grab a third hand. I may or may not wind up using it. We shall see. But these little guys are extremely useful. The third hands with cross-locking tweezers for holding stuff. Because obviously you can't hold things in an open flame because humans are flammable. So you need something that is not flammable to hold your stuff for you. Oh, sorry, I need something to put my third hand on. Okay, so I've got my third hand with my cross-locking tweezers, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my ring band up, and I want to make sure everything is aligned in my third hand. So cross-locking tweezers means you squeeze them to open them, so I'm just going to set that up, and then I'm going to position this so that my band is sitting against my A-frame exactly where I want it to solder on. Make sure you look at it from all angles, okay? And the main bummer about this is my third hand is blocking a lot of this. Let me see if I can get that a bit there. Okay, now you can see a little bit better. So this is not the best position for my third hand. It's a little precarious holding the ring just by the end like this, but it'll better allow you to see when the solder flows. If I put it in there the proper way, you can't see anything, which is no fun. Nobody came here tonight to just look at a soldering tweezers and nothing else. So make sure you always look at your work from all angles, just to make sure you really do have it, as centered as you think you do. Okay, so you can kind of see, you can see that joint there. This one's a little obscured by the tweezers, but you can at least see the magic happen over here. So I'm going to take my flux and I'm going to flux that joint. So flux is a protectant. What it does is it keeps your metal from oxidizing so that your solder will flow. And you do need that because if your metal oxidizes, if it gets that layer of black soot on it, that is something through which your solder cannot flow, which means that you're not going to be able to then complete your soldering process. I'm going to grab my solder cutters and I'm going to cut 2 pieces of easy solder. And this really is just 2 joints, so this is a really simple project as far as the soldering goes. In theory, 1, 2. And I'm going to place one of those little chips at each joint. So one there, one under there. Alright, here goes nothing. I'm going to grab my torch, light her up. I'm going to heat the whole thing. I'm going to heat the whole thing, and then I'm going to focus on my joints until my solder flows. So I'm just going to heat everything. Now, every piece of metal on here that's not being actively heated is what's called a heat sink. That means that it is pulling heat away from your joints. That includes your tweezers. So, don't be surprised if you got to put a little bit more heat into this than you're thinking you should. Once my flux has turned clear, I'm going to try focusing on the joint, see if I can get that solder to flow. Alright, so it flowed, but it flowed all over my A-frame, but not actually on my band at all, and then I bumped it. So these things together did not go well for me. That's okay. We're going to try it again. And try getting it positioned a little bit better, and I'm going to try and draw the solder with the heat. We're going to see if that works. Solder flows towards heat, so theoretically make the part that you want the solder to flow to hotter than the rest of it and it will connect. In that case, in this case, however, it's not working. So we're going to go to plan B and we're going to pick transfer it over there instead. So that means 2 more pieces of solder. And solder pick. So I just picked my solder ball up onto my pick and I'm going to heat my piece. I'm going to drop that off there. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to add the solder ball, drop it off there, and there we go. Beautiful. So sometimes you just have to try an alternative solution. Okay, and that is a little stuck to my solder board. There we go. Alright, so that is my A-frame ring, and I'm just going to set that on my steel block to cool, and then we are going to steel wool it to get it a little bit shiny, and then I'm going to set my stone. Alright, I'm going to put this up here. Hope I'm not jinxing myself. Now, if I had, once again, if I had thought ahead and brought some water, I could quench this in water and it would have become cool to the touch immediately. Of course, I didn't do that, so I have to wait for it to naturally cool. If you put it on a steel block, the block will leach the heat out pretty quickly, so it'll cool much faster on a block of steel than if you leave it on your solder board, because your solder board is designed to absorb heat and reflect it back on your work. It's to help you solder. It's designed to keep your work warm, and this is exactly the opposite. So just occurred to me that I didn't bring out the pickle pot. Silly me. Okay, so I'm going to go make some room for the pickle pot, and I'm going to grab it, and then we're going to throw that in to pickle. It'll take about 10-15 minutes, but I will be right back. Nothing in excuse me, in my pickle pot. So I got some water in there now, and I've got it on high, and then I'm going to add some pickle. So pickle comes in a powder, and I like citric acid pickle because it's, I mean, theoretically it's food grade, though just don't eat the crafting. It's never a good idea to eat the crafting. Or smell the crafting generally, unless you're making candles. I'm not super precise about the amount of pickle I use. I think that's about 4 tablespoons in about 2 inches of water in my small crock pot. If it's not working well, then I'll add a little bit more. There's really no such thing as it working too well. This brand, Lori, is, this one comes from Eurotool. This one's called Nature's Touch, and that's a Eurotool product. But there's also Auto Fry, F-R-E-I, has one I think called Citripickle. Most of your jeweler supply companies these days will carry a citric acid pickle. What a lot of jewelers still use, but what used to be the thing that everybody used, I'm going to go ahead and drop this in here. It's not going to do much until it's heated up, so you're just going to have to deal with me yakking at you for a little while. But what all jewelers used to use is a chemical called Sparax, and Sparax is more caustic than citric acid. The reason that I don't love using Sparax, even though it works really fast, is that it off-gases fumes that are harmful to your lungs if you're breathing them in all the time. And especially since, my workspace is my shop space, is the space where we have children's birthday parties, is the space where random customers are walking through all the time. I just don't like assuming that kind of liability. So I like the citric acid because it still works pretty darn well. It doesn't work quite as quickly as Sparax, but it works pretty well, and it doesn't off-gas any harmful fumes. So you don't have to worry about people walking through your workspace, and hacking up a lung and then being like, that Beading Dreams made me sick and I'm going to sue them and all blah, blah, blah. All that nonsense. And also the other thing I love about citric acid is it is not steel reactive, okay? Sparax is steel reactive. That means, so let's talk, because I got some time here. Let's talk about what pickle does, how it works. So what pickle is it is a weak acid solution, whatever acid you're using, whether that be citric acid, whether that be your Sparax, which I can never remember what kind of acid that is, or if you want to go completely natural, you can use 1-to-1 vinegar and salt. I don't use that because it's stinky, but it's a weak acid that cleans all the crud off of your metal so that you can either keep working on it or polish it and make it pretty to wear. So it's going to strip off all of those oxides. Now, when you're dealing with sterling silver, pure silver doesn't oxidize. It does not. If you take a lump of pure silver, you put a torch on it, it's going to melt, but it's not going to get black. So the black part on your silver after you're done soldering it is all of your copper that's oxidized. And so what the pickle does is it strips off those copper oxides to leave you with a clean white surface that you can then polish. I know what I did. That's Ziggy. A clean white surface that you can polish and make pretty to wear. So as you use your pickle, it's going to start getting more and more saturated with copper, with those copper oxides. And the thing about Sparax is that if you put anything steel in Sparax, all those copper oxides that are floating free in the solution will immediately plate themselves onto anything that's in the solution. So, you've got 7 rings in the pickle and you reach in there with some steel tweezers, stir it around, and all of a sudden you've got 7 copper-plated silver rings. Now, that is not necessarily a permanent problem. As we've discussed with Super Pickle, you can mix chemical solutions to strip the copper off. It's just an added step, and that is actually something that you can use to your advantage. If you're, say, soldering on copper with sterling silver solder, you can, have some used Sparax and, heat it up, throw your copper piece in there, throw a piece of steel wool in there, and it'll plate over your silver solder. That's a trick that a lot of jewelers use. But generally speaking, you don't want to copper plate your silver. It's usually the other way around. So I love the citric because it's not steel reactive, so I don't need to worry about what I grab things with. I can grab any old tweezers that happens to be hanging out on my workstation, grab stuff from the pickle, and it's all going to be fine. So it's just a little bit more stupid proof. We like stupid proof here on the Beading Dreams stream because sometimes we do things that are stupid. So it's just sitting in there. Pickle works best when it's hot, so if I had been thinking, I should have brought this out at the beginning of the stream and had it preheating this whole time, but of course I didn't, because I haven't been pickling things lately. I've just been tumbling them and posting pictures on Discord. but this one I think I have time to actually finish for you. Of course, waiting for pickle to pickle is kind of like waiting for water to boil or watching paint dry. So let's see, tomorrow night on the Beading Dream stream is Freeform Friday. I'm not completely sure what I'm gonna do. Yeah, really not sure what I'm gonna do, but something fun, I'm sure. I am gonna be freeforming from home, so it won't be a torch stream, I can tell you that for sure. Other than that, I have no idea. But again, hopefully something fun, something interesting, something educational. Okay, like, where are my chain nose pliers? I need those for my next step. And then Saturday's project is going to be this. This is our no solder sterling ring with a flush set stone. Okay, so that is a sterling silver forged ring that we are going to make that requires no torches and no solder. It does require some other hand tools, but no torches, no solder. Alright, this is heating up nicely. And the pickle will work when it's cold. It just doesn't work as well. So does anybody have any questions while we are literally sitting here waiting for the pickle to heat up? It's going to be a few more minutes. Any requests for sales? I was planning on doing glass beads on Saturday, but if anybody else has any requests, I will be happy to take requests now. I will not take requests for songs because I can't sing, but I will answer any questions that anybody has. I'll even open it to an AMA. You can ask me anything. It doesn't even have to be jewelry related. But I do need some caffeine. Nobody has questions? How do I feel about Chihuahuas? I take all doggos on a case-by-case basis. So my feeling about Chihuahuas will be different depending upon the personality of the Chihuahua that I meet. My favorite color is orange. Not like orange, like persimmon orange, like a, you know, kind of a reddish orange. Where did I get the fountain in my the Buddha fountain, which is actually in the garden now because it leaked? I believe that one was from Amazon. I did not actually buy that one for myself. That one was a gift, but I will see if I can find the link and send it to you. See? But be warned about keeping it inside. It did spring a little leak in the bottom and like drained out all over my wooden floors and the antique wooden cabinet that I had it on, so it now lives in the garden. I would not recommend. If I were to do it again, I would put something underneath. Well, I wouldn't put it on an antique cabinet. I would put something underneath it, just on the off chance that that happened. It's going. Have I ever licked a bead? I've never licked a bead on purpose, but I have bitten beads before. It is, some people know this, some people don't, but one of the best ways to tell if a pearl is genuine or faux is to gently bite it with your front teeth. And if your pearl is real, it's going to feel a little bit gritty, almost like really fine sugar. If it is fake, it will be smooth and glassy and your teeth will just kind of slip around on it. So never licked a bead, but definitely have bitten a lot of pearls in my career because it really is one of the most reliable ways to tell if you literally can't tell from a visual examination. It really is one of the most reliable methods, weird and strange as it is, I realize. Corvus, have you ever licked a bead? Because now I want to know where that question came from. Oh, blessed caffeine. Let's see. So Heather is at home working remote on the infamous flag project. Heather, you did not miss really anything today because we were slow. So I'm glad you were home to get lots of work done on flags. And I am almost done with samples for next week. I had a really cool, very complicated sample that did not work out at the last minute, so then I had to shove something else in its place. So I will be done with samples before I leave today, and those will be going out in the in the email on Monday. Fun stuff, soldered rings, fun knotting project, beaded tassel, and then some hammered bangle bracelets that are going to be really fun. Okay, I would not recommend licking the beads because sometimes it's not good for the beads. Also, you really should get the beads' consent before you lick them. I'm just saying. And maybe this may be a bad choice, but we're gonna see. Just gonna see if I can steal some of this goop off of it, or if I need to leave it in there for longer. Yes, Heather. It's true, you don't know where the beads have been. Maybe that's part of the appeal. It's winking at you, that's a yes. I mean, I guess you could count that as consent. I guess. I don't know. Okay, I'm going to pop that back in there, but that should go a little faster now that I've steel wooled it a bit. My hydros, I think, are all hydro. Oh no, I do have extenders on them. Yes, I've got a couple of inches of extender chain on my hydro quartz necklaces. Also because I love to layer, and so extender chains make it so much easier to make the layering thing work well when you can change the lengths of the beads. But yeah, so I did put some little cheater chains on the backs of my hydro quartz. Alright, so we're going to grab this out of the pickle now. For these types of necklaces, I use the .014 stringing cable. Corvus, a 49 strand stainless steel stringing cable in the .014, which is the size that we typically call fine. And that should work fine for the hydro quartz. For something like the diamond beads that are just super incredibly tiny, you have to use even finer, but for most of your other gemstone beads, that .014 is going to work just fine. Okay, so this is out of the... Oh goodness, I'm almost done. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and use steel wool to kind of buff as much of this black stuff off as I can. Now, typically if I weren't trying to finish this for you on stream, what I would do at this point is I would put this in my tumbler and I would just let it tumble. I would let all the black stuff tumble off, and that's going to take anywhere from, you know, a couple of hours to a day or so. You really can't, I mean, you can over tumble a piece, but it's really hard. So I'll typically just throw them in there and forget about them for a while. But if you don't have a tumbler or you don't have the time, you can definitely buff it by hand using some steel wool. This is some fine steel wool. This is quadruple zero. And don't forget to buff the inside of your A-frame, because this is going to be, You can see right through this ring, so this is not hidden. Relaxed is good. I'm glad I'm not putting you to sleep. Okay, so clean that up as best you can. Do the same on the other side. You could also do this with a Dremel or a flex shaft. Any kind of rotary tool will work. And then I'm going to go back to my chain nose pliers, and I'm going to grab on, okay, remember my score lines? So I'm going to do that thing where I grab on an angle again, and I'm going to start bending that on my score line. I'm not going to bend it all the way over, but I'm going to bend it part way over. I'm going to do the same for my other one. Alright, and now I'm widen that V out a bit. And I'm going to take my stone and I'm going to slide my stone in there. And ideally I want a little bit of tension in there because that's going to help to hold my stone. I know we've all just been like going at it. Blair with the moving, me with the cooking. No crazy glue, Corvus, that's cheating. Oh, my stone won't even go in there, so crazy glue at this particular moment, I need lube. I do have an alternative stone, so if, there we go. Okay, so just popped it in there. Once again, tension is good, okay? We want tension between the sides of the frame and my stone. So even before I bend these over, I should be able to shake this around and have my stone not come out. Then I'm just gonna take my pliers and carefully crimp down this part right here. Right? I mean, you know, just ask Mandy about lube and saws and she'll tell you. So I'm just going to gently, gently crimp that down so that it is actually holding my stone. Try to be as careful as you can. You are going to get some tool marks probably from your pliers, but try not to get too many. Now my positioning of my pliers is one jaw's underneath the bottom of my A-frame and one jaw's on the top of my little setting. And then I am just gently, gently squeezing. Okay, you want to be really careful when you're doing that. There's a little bit more light. Because if you squeeze too hard, you can crack your stone, even if it's something durable like an amethyst. And then since this stone is so long, there's a little bubble right there in the middle that I didn't quite get to. So I'm just going to sort of jimmy my pliers in and get that. Like so. And then I'm going to do the same on my other side. So again, half my pliers underneath, half my pliers on top, gently crimp. So what you want is you want that to lay down against the stone as much as possible. You could also put this in a ring clamp and use a prong pusher. Okay, and then these right here, these are definitely dangerous. So I'm just gonna find myself a little file. maybe. I'm going to find a little file. I see you. Stop running away from me. Ha! Found it. Alright, I'm just going to take a little file, and I'm going to very carefully, making sure not to scratch my stone, I'm just going to round off these edges right here, because that is something that's totally going to catch on clothing and whatnot. If you're scared of your stone, you can definitely put some tape down, but as long as you stay on the top of your metal, your chances of hitting your stone are much less. Okay, so you can see that little shiny bit. That's where I filed, and I'm just going to do that for all 4 of these kind of stabby corners. Now I could have made these a little bit narrower if I wanted to. I kind of like that the amethyst is just sort of peeking through in the middle, but I could have shaved a solid millimeter off of each of these and they still would have held securely. Alright, so and it's always helpful to brace it against something when you're filing. She says while struggling to brace it against something. This is where having a proper benchman comes in really handy for filing. Any little last minute tweaks to it. Buff up the top a little bit with the steel wool, and the steel wool is not going to hurt your amethyst, so you don't need to worry about that. I can just give that a little bit more of a buff, and like I said, I could go after that with a rotary tool or a flex shaft if I wanted it to be shinier, but there we go. That is our completed A-frame ring, and that, I mean, that stone is, it's in there. It is in there good and solid. So thank you all so much for hanging out with us on our Torch Thursday stream for our A-frame ring class. That is definitely a fun, large statement piece right there. So yeah, thanks so much for hanging out with us on the Beading Dreams stream. I'm Allison from Beading Dreams in Dallas, Texas. We are an actual brick and mortar retail bead store. We're here on Lover's Lane, and we are open for business in person Monday through Saturday from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. Of course, you can also find us on this channel, twitch.tv/beadingdream, 5 times a week with complimentary tutorials. We are here Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at 6 p.m. Central Time, plus Thursdays at noon with live tutorials, which are complimentary, and we do live merchandise sales every Wednesday and every Saturday at 7:30 p.m. So if you want to support a local bead shop, we are so happy to have you. So tomorrow night is Freeform Friday. I will be picking a project and doing it start to finish on stream. Not quite sure what it is yet, but I'll make it something fun, I promise. And then Saturday, I will be back at 6 p.m. with our no solder sterling silver ring. So everyone have a great night, and I will see y'all back on this channel, twitch.tv/beadingdream tomorrow at 6. Bye!